Andor is a Star Wars show that's actually good. Vice magazine. Andor is the best Star Wars show yet. Time magazine. The breathtaking Andor season finale is the very best of what Star Wars stories can be. USA Today. Andor is what Star Wars was meant to be. Wired magazine. I could go on and on, dear listener, but I think you get my meaning. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Hello again. My name is Lord Deathman, and this is the podcast of champions. On today's show, we are reviewing season 1, episode 12 of Star Wars Andor, Rick's Road. Before we get started, let's dispense with the unpleasantries. This show will contain spoilers. Also, if you haven't already, you can check us out in social on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., etc. And as always, you can join the conversation live at sakar.freeforums.net. I want to get to some introductions so we can start talking about the season finale of Andor here. Very excited to talk about this excellent episode and get the champion's perspective on it. Today in the arena, I have Taylor, the fan without fear. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing good.
I also have the Grandmaster, Master of Ceremonies. You ready to talk Andor today?
Absolutely.
And last but certainly not least, we have a champion, a few words, but also but always good words. Merv, are you ready to talk about this season finale and the retrospective now that we've seen the whole entirety of the canvas of Andor? Are you ready?
I am.
All right. All right. So the champions are ready to do this. I hope you are, dear listener. Now that we've got introductions out of the way, you know who I am and you know who we are and what we came to do. I'll give you a quick explanation on the format here. So we do a quick impressions for our first round of discussion. Second round, we do deep dive analysis. In this particular episode, we're also going to be doing a sort of post-mortem on the entire season when we talk deep analysis. And then last but not least, we also do a rating for the episode. And if the champion can muster it, we'll also give a rating for the entire season. So that's the way we do things here. We know that Andor has really been, people are waking up to Andor. I think that's the accurate thing to say now that we've reached the end of it. It's turned out to be the little hyperdrive that could. And it's got people talking about everything from fascism to human rights issues to Star Wars. So you never think you'd get the two in the same sentence. But I'm going to dive into the conversation straight away. Starting with you, Taylor, let me get your impressions, your quick impressions of Rick's Road. How did that play out for you?
Well, it was good. The acting as usual was good. The writing as usual was excellent. Didn't really feel like the season finale that I was hoping for, that I was expecting. Thought it would be a little bit bigger, a little bit more happened in the last episode of the season, which is kind of the norm for modern streaming shows. But the episode itself was just as good as almost all the previous episodes.
You bring up some interesting points, Taylor. Andor as a series seems to want to defy the conventions of the standard streaming series that you get. Cliffhangers, it seems like writers just write cliffhangers to write them, and whether they get resolved or not these days is happenstance. It does feel like it intentionally didn't want this to be a finale, but really just the last episode in a collection without a huge sort of cliffhanger that we're now supposed to wait 2 years to get a resolution on. So, I mean, are you saying that you think that approach is just bad, or it just wasn't what you were expecting?
And it's not necessarily bad. It's like I said, it's not what I was expecting. I was expecting, something just a little bit more decisive, a little bit more conclusive. Not that the whole story was going to end at that point. Obviously, it's going to be a continuing story throughout the length of the series. But I just thought there would be a little bit more of a climax to the current storyline and a setup for the future.
Right. Something to get us excited about while we wait. What no doubt is going to be a long time before we see season 2. I can report here officially that production on season 2 has started, so that is a save, or at least according to the interwebs, they've started filming. But Taylor, we'll circle back to you and some of these thoughts on the deep dive. I really appreciate the perspective. I'm going to jump over to Grandmaster now. What were your initial impressions of Rick's Road? Do you feel similarly to Taylor, or do you have a different perspective?
I see what Taylor's saying, but it didn't really bother me, or wasn't really an issue at all, actually, for me. Yeah, I loved it. They stuck the landing like Nadia Comaneci in the 1976 Olympics. I mean, perfect 10. As simple as that. And yeah, I loved this show from start to finish, and Rick's Road was a fitting finale for the show that we got. And I really cannot wait for season 2 to drop on Disney Plus.
Yeah. I would have to agree with you. I'm in the perfect flawless landing category myself, but I am eager to hear what the rest of the champions have to say. I want to ask you a question though before we move on. I mean, Andor really feels like it's the Better Call Saul of the Star Wars universe. Flawless but ignored. And that being said, why do you think that is? Do you think that people are just late catching up with it, or is it just so different that the Star Wars fan cannot wrap their mind around it?
Well, it's not for the fandom menace, and because it doesn't have the aliens in the background, it doesn't have the cool characters in cool costumes. It doesn't have the cameos from beloved fan characters. This show purely is drives on story, character development, good writing, good dialogue, and yeah, a good production value as well, of course. But it's yeah, I hate to say this, but if the rest of Star Wars is kid stuff compared to Andor, it's really for people who want to see this kind of well balanced, well written stuff with a strong message and a strong critique on modern society. Even. So yeah, that's not for everybody. I mean, everybody fell in love with Star Wars because of lightsaber fights and Yoda and stuff like that. And this is totally not that. And I mean, it even had bricks and screws. My lord.
Yeah, yeah. Indeed, indeed. The Freemasons got involved. But
Yeah.
all right. Thank you so much for the commentary, Grandmaster. I'm going to jump over to Merv. Merv, let's get your perspective here. Rick's Road season finale. Where do you fall in terms of our conditioning for what a season finale should be? Lots of explosions, cliffhangers, maybe even some character deaths, right? That's typically how we've been trained these days versus what happened here, which was just a progression of the story, a big event, set at the funeral on Ferrix. Where do you fall in terms of the discussion here?
I loved it, but I won't say it's perfect. It's definitely not perfect. But I didn't care that it wasn't perfect because of the kind of centerpiece of this episode. I will say I get where Taylor's coming from with there isn't like a nice capstone to the end of the Andor series outside of Cassian's evolvement into the Resistance, but we'll get into that later, I assume. But yeah, as an episode itself, I watched it and then I wanted to rewatch it right away. I thought it was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought there was emotional moments in it that were fantastic. And some of the speeches and dialogues are just so fun to watch and rewatch and listen to, and they hit a lot of good beats.
Yeah, they certainly did. And, there is confusion about this. There are mixed feelings about this. I've done my due diligence. And much like Luthen at the end of the episode, a lot of us are left to wonder, what game is this? It doesn't feel like our standard operating procedure as far as Star Wars goes, or a streaming series finale. So, yeah, we're going to try and talk this out. We're going to talk this out. Now that we've got the quick impressions going, I want to circle back around. We're going to do deep dive discussions on this episode. And also during this critique, guys, you usually give me your likes, your dislikes, high points, low moments. But let's try to look at the bigger canvas. Now that we have the complete picture of Andor, what do you guys feel about the season in general? If you can kind of slide that into your narratives. I want to start with Taylor. What's your take on this?
Well, the season was great. I mean, the show is just excellent, extremely well done, and I find it extremely entertaining. So I have no problems with the show whatsoever. As far as the episode, a high point, of course, was the funeral scene and the subsequent violence that happened there. Again, very well done. Everything in the season did actually lead up to that point in a way. So I had no problem with that. And again, I had no problem with the episode at all. It's just, again, I was expecting more of your average modern streaming series drama thing, where there would be some big event, and it was a big event, but really big cliffhanger, or not even a cliffhanger, but a big season capping event that doesn't necessarily end the story or even end the storylines, but I was just sort of expecting more than what they had here. Like, for example, I mean, there were previous episodes, like the prison break episode and the episode with the battle on the planet before. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the planet. But yeah, that's the one when they try to arrest Andor. Those were bigger episodes, I thought, than this episode, which isn't, again, not a bad thing. I like movies and stories that have a slow burn, but now we've got probably almost 2 years to wait for this thing to burn some more. There's two types of slow burns. There's a slow burn that leads to a roaring fire, and there's a slow burn that fizzles out.
Right.
You got to walk a fine line there before you start falling into soap opera territory, where the story just goes on and on and on for years, and nothing ever actually gets resolved. I'm not saying that about this show. I'm just saying that this stuff has to be kept in mind. But the episode was excellent. Of course, there's nothing you can say bad about this show or any of its parts. The actors, the characters, the character development, the storytelling, the writing, all fantastic. We've got now Cyril and Dirza, you got her name, the ISB officer. They are. He saved her life, more or less, or at least helped her, got her out of danger during the riot. So those two are definitely going to be continuing in one way or another.
Right.
Of course, Luthen is still kind of a mystery at this point, but now we know that Andor is kind of on board with him. At least that's the indication at the end. So he's probably going to become a key tool for Luthen's drive to build this rebellion. And I'm still not sure, and this is a good part, the mystery to it. I'm not sure what Luthen's real goals are.
What is
I know it seems like, right, exactly. He doesn't like the Empire. We know that, but what's he want to replace it with? And how exactly does he really want to go about doing it? Again, this is all stuff that I'm looking forward to, in next season. And lastly, of course, we have Mon Mothma, and the tightrope that she's walking, trying to keep from being discovered, and the fact that she had to do the the introduction of her daughter to the guy's son.
Yeah.
And we don't know, the daughter didn't seem to have a problem with it, and apparently in their culture it's kind of a normal thing. However, she didn't want to do it because of the person that she's dealing with, and the fact that she's getting money from this person, and now he's a loose end, he's a liability. He has stuff on her that he can continue to use against her. So again, it's all very fascinating, and the show is great. I just don't want him to get too mental and forget about some of the payoff along the way,
Right. The suspense, the action. We don't want to leave those parts. But going back to Mon Mothma just for a second, we have to really look that squarely in the face. Mon Mothma could be prostituting her daughter. That this is an exchange of her daughter getting into an arranged marriage for money. And I really think that that's incredible as far as Star Wars goes. So,
well, I mean, look at the kind of, it's kind of a feudal culture that's in the Star Wars universe. You've got royalty, royal houses, empires, guilds, all these different things. And like I said, in many cultures, especially in human past, when royalty held sway, arranged marriages were very much the norm for the very reason that you're talking about: money, power, influence, land, etc.
Yeah, could be seen as offensive to the modern sensibilities, but you're absolutely right about the historical context of it. There's just something so distasteful about it,
Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
There we go. There we go. But yeah, everyone feels somewhat compromised in this. And I think, Taylor, you're really touching on something. Everywhere you look in this universe, no one can kind of get out with their hands clean. And I think that's just one of the most interesting aspects of the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Taylor, was there anything else you thought you wanted to add about the season finale, the show in general?
Well, like I said, the show in general is great. I love that the headlines that you read in the opening. The entertainment media has obviously embraced this show.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that a good part of the fandom, or a new part of the fandom, gets created in large numbers for this show.
Yeah. Yeah, this seems like a real opportunity to bring a new type of Star Wars fan into the fold with this incredibly engaging story about a faction of rebels trying to fight fascism. This show works on so many levels that you could take away the fantastic trappings of it and really just have a normal human drama, and this would still be incredibly engaging. Yeah. So, but thanks for your comments as always, Taylor. I am going to jump over to Merv and get your season retrospective. I know that's a tall order, but we're going to talk it through. And let's take a look at some high points and low points to Rick's Road as well.
Yeah, just starting with Rick's Road. The obvious high point was the funeral march and the Marva's eulogy, which turns into a call to arms, which leads to a small riot / rebellion against the Empire, at least on Ferrix. That was all great. Just some minor lows for the episode were in the ensuing chaos. There was a few edits that were a little wonky, or felt like there might have been a scene cut. Specifically, the one that I noticed every time I watched it was when Cyril is helping Deidre. He picks up the gun, and then so Deidre is being mobbed by 6 people, and then they show Cyril pick up the gun, and in the very next shot, he's got her with a gun to her back, and she doesn't know it's him, but he leads her into a room for safety.
Right.
And it's just like, well, what happened to those like half a dozen people that we never see what happens there? I don't know if it's just chaotic or what. It's a small thing, but it was just like, it felt like something was there and they removed it for time purposes or something. I don't know, or maybe they just wrote around it. It doesn't matter. But there was just a few things like that, like during the chaos of the rioting and all that
Right.
stuff. But as an episode, I loved it. I thought the eulogy, specifically Marva's speech in her eulogy, was emotional every single time I watched it. And that was a character like I felt little to no attachment to before this episode, and this episode specifically just made it all the deeper for that. As a season as a whole, I think it's one of the best season ones that I've seen in a while of anything, not just Star Wars. I do think it's probably the best season of anything Star Wars that's been on Disney Plus. I mean, I'd have to rewatch The Mandalorian, but I know for sure there were episodes that I was like meh about, and I don't feel that way about any of the episodes in Andor. Maybe the first one or two. It's hard to even remember that far back at this point. But overall, the only, like, if I were to point out any negative in the whole season so far, it would really just be the flashback whenever Andor's a kid at the first couple episodes. I remember feeling like those didn't really do anything for me to add to the storyline. Like,
Right.
I don't know that we needed it. And even now, like after the Marva speech, and it's like a kind of a mother-son relationship, I still don't know that we needed it. But that's really the only thing that I can think of that was, that I watched and I was like, that could be cut. The pacing of the show overall is an interesting one in I like it, where it's kind of like it's been doing this all season, where it's like kind of short stop gaps. There's a couple episodes storyline and another couple episodes storyline, and they over arc a little bit, but it's like you can kind of see where like the smaller arcs are going and stopping. And this is probably an okay point to stop the season, despite it not feeling like wow, that was a season finale, like
Right.
to that degree. But I don't know if I'm kind of viewing it as like a novel, like this has like a novel ending, like where finally our main character is in line with this resistance, and the next one he's going to be full on resistance member. You know what I mean? In the next book, the next season.
Right.
That's the expectation, and I wish it didn't feel so far away at the moment because if there's one thing about this show, you just want more of it right away. Like, just give me
Yeah.
more. Just keep giving me more of this, and it just feels like 2024, I guess, is when it will air, and that just feels ages away.
Ages away. Ages. Yeah. But that being said, awesome commentary on this, by the way. And I think I agree with you with regards to some of the stuff regarding Cassian's childhood. That did feel not unnecessary to me, but certainly like you could take it or leave it. If it wasn't there, I probably wouldn't have felt that the show suffered for it. But that being said, there is this theme of in this final episode of everyone making these sacrifices, no one getting away unscathed. We have Cinta and Vel. Their relationship seems to be very subordinate to the struggle with the rebellion, and we get a quick vignette that shows that it's taking a toll on them as a couple, as individuals. I mean, we even see some of the chinks in the armor of Supervisor Miro. She is wanting to be a part of a conversation that's happening at HQ, but also having to do her due diligence on the ground on Ferrex, right? She's in a room full of men. Let's also say that as it is. And I think she's trying to get her voice heard in terms of, what good are a lot of dead rebels that we can't interrogate. But her boss is like, let me keep you focused and bring me access, right? That's how you can get the conversation started again. And I love those exchanges. I love the fact that everyone is kind of feeling the pinch, right? No one is in the catbird seat, if you will. What do you think about that aspect of it, Merv?
Yeah, I love all that. I love that the Empire's, I guess, I don't know if you want to say buckling to the pressures of the Emperor, is it's gonna, in theory, be its own downfall. You know, you're sacrificing information which could be vital in order to make a point or get the bad taste out of their mouth. So that, I mean, that just showed, like, didn't mention the, I forget what the word is, but the tape that Cassian was listening to from the guy from a couple episodes ago, that he made like a, I forget what the word is, but he was listening to it, and it was like very, you know, like there are people who have enlisted in this cause and they don't even know it yet, you know,
Right.
because the Empire is putting their boot down on so many different planets, on so many different lives, that they're causing the rebellion to increase in number, and it just, like, that rang true, and just all the different shades of the corporate structure of the Empire, the honestly the corporate structure of the rebellion at this point,
Yeah.
just the way all
Yeah.
those relationships coincide. The Cinta in I'm drawing
And
blanks
Vel.
on all the characters' names at the moment. I'm sorry, but the Cinta and her partner's relationship was an interesting one too. I think it shows that, like, you know, Cinta is full on board for this first, and the other character just wants, like, a hello. You know what I mean? Like, hey,
Right.
it's been a while since I saw you. Maybe we could have a hug. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
she's just full on mission first priority, and yeah, it's an interesting thing to see, like, essentially this war start in what it's going to do to all the different people in the universe. You know, how it's going to affect them emotionally and everything else.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And yeah, I think you're right about Vel, Cinta's partner. She's just looking for a little tenderness in this
Yeah.
whole thing. And you know, Cinta's not about it. She will stab you in an alley. That's what Cinta will do. Uh,
Which was great also.
yeah, that was a really great moment, especially when Vel is trying to look after her, seeing the blood, and she's like, "This isn't my blood." So don't worry about it. But that being said, great talking to you about this stuff as always, Merv. We obviously, Grandmaster, we've talked this to death. You know, Taylor's gotten his points out, Merv has gotten his points out, but this show is so layered and so complex and has so many details. I think you and I are still going to be able to have a lot to talk about here. So let's get the big canvas of the season and your highs and lows for Rick's Road in whatever order you want to do that. What really stood out for you?
Well, what stood out to me is that the finale was exactly what I hoped for, in the sense that it didn't make the mistake that a lot of shows do, just put all the characters in one place, have a big battle, and indeed a climax, a cliffhanger ending, and then that's that. It wouldn't fit with the overall vibe and tone of the show. Actually, the finale did exactly what I hoped it would do. Yes, there was action, but still the intrigue, story, characters, those were the main parts of it. And that's actually what I loved about this finale. So, yeah, again, I understand what Taylor is saying, I understand what Merv is saying, but I do not agree with it. I think this was actually perfect for Andor, as a show that I have come to love. And more on that later. Um, what stood out to me is that they had a very good build up. Like every 5 minutes or so, and it started right at the beginning, they introduce a new character to add to the story, to add another layer to the story. I mean, it starts with Miro landing on Ferrex, like she's Darth Vader. I mean, there was a striking parallel with Darth Vader landing in that same vessel. I don't know the names. I'm sorry, I'm not that deep into Star Wars lore. Into a Death Star and stepping out, you know.
Yeah.
And she did the same, but then on Ferrex. I thought that was very. I mean, she had Death Troopers as a escort, for crying out
Personal
loud.
escort.
That
I
was
think we
great.
all need, you know, at least 2 death troopers to accompany us wherever.
Oh yes, especially when I go to the other story. No, that's a joke. I love my work. Um, What I also noticed is in this season we had a whole storyline revolving about Anton Krieger and a power plant on Spellhouse. That whole storyline happened off screen. We saw a holographic image of Anton Krieger, but from the moment they started to talk about it until we get in this finale, the fact that they have captured him and killed him and prevented the attack on Spellhouse, it happened completely off screen. Still,
Yeah.
it was a major part of some of the episodes where it caused especially for Luthen, some difficulties with Saw and and the ISB was constantly involved with that. So I thought it was very well written. You don't have to show all the time. You can just drop lines here and there, and you have a complete storyline happening, which is great, by the way.
Yeah.
And I also like that Partgas is his name. I think the major, from the ISB, said this was pure payback for Aldani. They need to feel that we can strike back. I did that on purpose. What I noticed is that at the moment that conversation ended and Miro hang up the space phone, she had a sigh and like, oh my God, what happened? Was that because, and it's been in the back of my mind for the whole time. She looks like a very fanatical ISB officer, but is she really? I mean, why does Luthen encourage Lonnie that Miro needs to climb higher in the ISB? He claims he doesn't know her, but is that the case?
Uh-oh. You are putting out some serious conspiratorial.
Well, it's something that's been on the back of my mind for a few episodes now, and I just wanted to blab it out now. It would make sense for Luthen, the chess player that he is, because he's playing chess while the others are playing checkers, to have another ISB officer moving up into the ranks, and she may appear very fanatical, but she doesn't necessarily has to be a fascist. But anyway, that could also be interesting in her developing relationship, because if Miro and Cyril are not doing the deed in season 2, I don't know what's happening between those two, but there was enough tension again in that little scene they shared together.
Yeah, there was. I do want to say something about now that we're talking about Miro. I want to say that I feel like Miro is a careerist. She definitely wants to get ahead and she wants to prove competency, but I don't know that she's actually a fascist, right? It just feels like she wants to do things as perfectly as she can be to sort of be seen as equal with those around her. So I don't know.
I agree, but I'm not sure if she's really a careerist or she's driven by something else.
Could
inner
be
motivation.
You heard it here, listeners. We've got
the
inside dope on Supervisor Miro.
The funeral scene. I loved that the fact that the people of Ferrex said, "Oh, you want us to start at 2 and have only 30 people? No, we're going to start earlier and we're going to come out in force." Yeah, screw you, Empire. But what they don't realize, but what actually was happening, the plan that Luthen was making with Val and Cinta to have Andor killed was also crossed by their early start. They also had to adjust and couldn't do what they wanted to do. I also like that all that stuff was happening. Your mother is getting a funeral and everything, but you hear your friend is locked up in a prison somewhere. So you only have one thing to do while all that stuff is happening, and that is free your friend. Andor is a guy on a mission. Now he's a rebel with a cause, and well, he made Luthen an offer he can't refuse. I really liked Andor in this particular episode. What he was doing, he was playing games, and the people of Ferrex were helping him. actually, there was a lot of spy games going on. I mean, you see Miro and Court, what's his name? The guy that was murdered by Cinta, walking through Ferrex the night before the funeral, and then you see Cinta following them again. You know, there was a lot of things going on which I really liked. What I've said, like I said, the intrigue and the story was more important than the action. The action was there. I mean, how ironic is it that the first blow was given by the stone from Marfa? That was good. I also really liked when the guy up in the tower just kicked the stormtrooper out of the tower. That was funny to me. Actually, stormtroopers were hitting the mark this time in this
We can't
episode.
get competent troopers. Even the 2 death troopers that escorted Miro get taken out fairly quickly in this.
Yeah.
Not their Rogue One performance. Not at all.
I also like that Mon Mothma is very smart. She knows that her driver is ISB. And that was already mentioned in one of the previous episodes, right at the beginning, I think, even. So she creates circumstances by her conversation in the car with her husband that it makes sense for her to, well, at least have some kind of it is like a, how you say, a cover up for what's actually going on in her banking environment. Her husband has gambling problems. It makes sense. This looks a little bit shady. It's really smart. Mom of mine is a smart lady, and that's something that's. What I also liked is that at the moment of the funeral is that the Empire is, this is not going the way we have planned. You know what? Show of force. We need to show that we are in control. Well, they were not in control for a moment. That's from my Empire. I mean, that's how we know the Empire from all of Star Wars. Incompetent. Well, this was pure incompetence. Even though Mira was involved in, she's fairly competent, but she also lost the plot during the funeral. At a certain moment. So she was dragged around in the street and she had to be saved by, well, Cyril. And Cyril is, I liked actually, Cyril just wants to be important. And in the end, he's not really. I mean, he can't even, he wants to cross the perimeter. He can't. He saved Miro, but yeah, in the end, what is his accomplishment?
Right. Yeah. Well, he's the prototypical fascist, someone who isn't important but wants themselves to appear to be, and will go to sort of psychotic lengths to achieve that.
Yeah. One final thought. The Marfa speech. I think that is all, from Marfa's speech and all that happened. Marfa's speech ignites the rebellion of Ferrex. Can I say it like that? Yeah, I don't know the correct English word, but you know what I mean.
Speech is basically the shot heard round the galaxy. I think it precipitates true rebellion.
That speech not only did good for Luthen, who was listening to it, and he realizes that there are indeed a lot of rebellions going on, just like the manifest said in the one where Andor is listening. But it also did some good for Biggs. I mean, she was listening to it in her cell, and you see her light up, and I really liked that. I think that speech gave her the strength to go with Andor and save herself. And the fact that she say Andor will find us.
That was incredibly moving.
Yeah, exactly. But it was also a moment where you can see, okay, Biggs is not lost, and I like that both Marva and her son Andor, Cassian Andor, played a part in that small recovery that she's showing, and I really liked it. So overall, this final for me was excellent. just as this whole season has been. Basically, I think for 2022, we had a lot of shows coming out on streaming. We're not done yet because the Willow show is still coming. But overall, I think not only on Disney Plus, not only for Star Wars, not only for what do you say? Now, to say this was the best streaming show of 2022 by far, when it comes to writing, when it comes to acting, when it comes to dialogue, when it comes to production value, it was near perfection. And I agree with Merv. We have been raving about Rings of Power in our review series. Little did I know that Andor would outshine Rings of Power, and with a much smaller budget, I might add. And for Rings of Power, I have the feeling, okay, I can wait 2 years before I see season 2 because they need that time, and I hope they deliver on it. And Rings of Power is by no means bad, but Andor is just slightly above it, and I agree. 2024 is way too far away for us to get season 2. I agree with Merv. It has been the best season 1 that I've seen in a while, and I will go even one further. I think it's one of the best season 1 in TV history.
Wow, that's extremely high praise.
Yeah.
And it's easily my favorite series of 2022, but to say of all time, wow. Okay.
And as a Trekkie, it pains me to say, but Andor season 1 is better than any season 1 of Star Trek in history.
I will caveat that in defense of my beloved Star Trek. I'm going to say that it's the best season 1, at least of all modern Star Trek. I don't know about. I see Taylor. I can't let you take away first gen and second gen Star Trek, but this third wave of Star Trek easily, Andor blew it away. I wish we could bring the discipline of Andor. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm a bigger Star Trek fan than Star Wars, but Star Wars has officially outshone Star Trek. It happened. This is more relevant than you would see in Star Trek. And Star Trek is where you go for relevant science fiction. It happened, and I have to live with it.
No, but Andor did exactly what Star Trek is supposed to do: critique modern society through science fiction story. And Star Wars used to be about fairy tales, about a battle between good and evil, and Andor completely
obliterated,
disregarded that, and actually is a critique of modern society packed in a science fiction story. So Andor is everything Star Trek should be, but isn't.
We went there, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. We went there. All right, guys. This has been an incredible discussion about an incredible show. We do have further business to get through. Listeners out there, you're going to want to hang in there for this, because we're going to give our hopefully a season rating for Andor, and we're also going to give Rick's Road a rating. So I'm going to start the conversation with Taylor. Haven't heard from you in a minute. What is your rating for Andor season 1 and the season finale? You are on mute, Taylor.
Sorry about that. Answer is 9 out of 10 for both.
9 out of 10. Incredibly strong for an incredibly strong show. Any closing remarks, Taylor? Anything you want to bring up that we might not have touched upon?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on a whole lot, and there's a whole lot more to come.
We did it.
I want to see it even step up even more in the next season. I'm still not scared of the Empire. I want to be more scared of the Empire.
Okay.
So I want the season 2 to be the Empire Strikes Back of Andor.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. That's a high bar to set, but you know what? I'm getting on board the Taylor train. I want that too. Let's get a super scary Empire. Grandmaster, you're up next. We need to provide a rating for Rick's Road, and the season, if you can muster one.
I agree, Taylor. Both 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm not going 10 out of 10 because, yeah, overall, it's near perfect. It's not perfect.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And 9 out of 10 is an extremely strong grade. That would leave final duties falling to you, Merv, season finale review, as well as your rating for the entire season.
At the risk of sounding redundant, I'm also going to go 9 out of 10 for both.
Yeah.
Just two more comments. One, I loved that the stormtrooper got kicked off that bell tower by the guy with the anvil, or the hammers, I mean, because he couldn't see the steps because their suits are so terrible. You know, he had his head down the whole time. That's the only reason he got kicked. It's because he had to watch where he was stepping, or else he would have tripped.
Right. Right.
And I love the similarities between the flashback with Clem, where they're getting rust off of components, and then later in Marva's speech, she refers to the Empire as rust, like cleaning the rust up. You know what I mean? I thought there was similarities there that I liked, but 9 out of 10 for both. I mean, this is a great show. It's really great.
All right, guys, you heard it here. If you haven't been watching Andor, you probably should. The panel has come out with a unanimous 9 out of 10 for this show. That's one of the strongest ratings we've produced for anything this year. I would like to give special mention, honorable mention, for a couple of things that we didn't touch upon during the show. We did have a young actor, Mohammed Baher, if I'm pronouncing his name right, who played the character Wilman, who is essentially the bomb maker in this episode. And I thought that that character not having any lines, but seeing that he had now turned to rebellion and even terrorism was really interesting in terms of the episode. I think he added a little something there. I also want to give a lot of props to Adria Arjana, who plays Bix Kayleen, a great character, and playing the traumatized version of herself, a lot less glamorous, practically a vegetable cognitively, who can come out of it every once in a while with certain prompting. Great acting going on there. And to Gary Beadle, who played Clem Andor, Andor's I guess foster father. We see a couple of vignettes with him in terms of some flashbacks. Great stuff there. Like I said, a show with a lot of detail, a lot of moving parts, enough to keep you engaged. We can't speak highly enough of it here on the podcast of Champions. But with that being said, I think that's going to bring this episode to a close. I do want to say that you can catch us on social media in all of the usual places, et cetera, et cetera. You can catch us on the board as well at sakar.freeforms.net. And let us know in the comments in this video, are you watching Andor? Were you a little late to the party? Do you think it's as good as we think it is good? What is your take on that? We'd love to hear from you. Until then, may the force be with you.